Excuse me.
Okay, we have on here today Larry Weishuhn, um, someone that I've been following you for a long time, Larry. So how about you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll chat a little bit.
Sounds great. It's good to be with you as well, too. As you mentioned, my name is Larry Weishuhn. I'm a wildlife biologist, outdoor writer, do a whole lot of different things in the outdoor industry, and been doing it for probably about, most of my life, which is well over 50 years of as a wildlife biologist, outdoor writer, and done a little guiding, done a little bit of speaking, have done some television, some podcasting, and a little bit of everything when it comes to the outdoor communication side when we look at hunting, guns, and wildlife conservation.
Cool. Yeah, and you get to travel all over the place, and you said you're a wildlife biologist. What kind of things have you done as far as that goes?
As a wildlife biologist, I started out at Texas A&M under contract with the game department and Department of Veterinary Pathology, doing wildlife disease research while I was still an undergraduate, and then worked several years as a wildlife biologist for the state of Texas. Worked statewide, doing a lot of different things. But during that time frame, I worked with everything from alligators to desert bighorn sheep to a lot of different whitetail, mule deer, some of the exotic things, pronghorn antelope, elk, game birds, migratory birds, and spent time too for several years as the technical systems biologist for South Texas, where I set up wildlife management programs on properties, having to do everything from the ground on up in terms of vegetation to wildlife to livestock to doing the surveys to making harvest recommendations, making recommendations that could be done to improve the wildlife habitat. And as I said, worked with a lot of different species over those years, and I spent a lot of time as well too over the years after I left the department doing wildlife management consultation on a private basis all over North America, but then also in different parts of the world as well too.
Okay. Um, so like when you said consultations, like you go to a specific piece of property and let them know, what their goals should be and that kind of thing.
Well, what we did is basically I'd visit the landowner, visit with the hunting groups, and have them tell me kind of where they wanted to head, and then we would look at those things and say, well, this is a reasonable expectation, or this is an unreasonable expectation. But if you want to try to improve the habitat for this particular game species or non-game species, and a lot of times that's what we did as well too, then we would come up with specific recommendations in terms of habitat improvement, and that can include removal of brush. The planting of different native species to just about a little bit of everything, doing the cattle operation, if you are timber operation, to really improve that habitat for particular game species, most instances. But what we learned when we did all those things for the game species, we greatly increased the bird population, songbird population, all the little animals that live there, the butterflies, all those things benefited when we started carrying on a good management program of habitat for the game species, them being the targeted species.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, since there's so many similarities from species to species. If it's going to benefit this one, then it'll benefit this one if they use the same types of habitat and whatnot. So I'm going to ask you a question here. You do a lot of hunting all over the country. You've been all over the world. What's your favorite species to hunt?
No, there are many different species that are favorites of mine, but I guess if you came really down to it, it'd probably be the two primary deer species we have here in North America, that being whitetail and mule deer. I love hunting whitetail, but also really enjoy hunting mule deer because of the habitat that they're in, and they're a little bit different from whitetail deer as well too. So, but I've enjoyed hunting a lot of different species, but I have to say those two are probably my favorite.
Yeah, I haven't had the the fortune to hunt too much besides whitetails. I mean, technically in Missouri, your tag's good for a mule deer or a whitetail, but mule deers very, very rarely make it to Missouri. It's just in the regulations. So
Yes.
whitetails is about it. But it's definitely a passion of mine. I've got a picture that you signed. It's been well over 20 years ago, of you with a moose, and I believe it's a Thompson Center Contender pistol. You're posed with a moose and that pistol. And if I remember, I think I read the article that it was one of the trial hunts for the Contender. Does that ring a bell?
It was an upgrade to the Contender, and I remember the photograph. It was of a Maine moose that I shot. It was the first animal taken with what we ended up calling the Encore.
The Encore, that's right.
Have an upgrade. For the most part, the Contenders were designed for straight shoulder cartridges, because they were not designed for the high pressures that you get with a sharper shoulder cartridges such as 308, that's what I used on that moose. And it was shot in Maine, and it was probably at one of the Bass Pro stores back then. I was on the Red Head Pro Hunt, and yes, I definitely remember the photograph, and it was a TC Encore. I used to do a lot of handgun hunting with the TC guns, and of course, I also love the revolvers as well, and done some work for Ruger and Taurus and a bunch of other companies now as well too that produce the wheel guns, if you will.
Yeah, I remember reading some articles and things. I remember that you handgun hunted a lot years ago. That's something that I've gotten into in the last couple of years. I haven't managed to harvest anything yet. Now I'm a little offbeat. I've got a 1911 chambered in 10 millimeter.
Good cartridge.
Yeah, and that's what I deer hunt with. It's got, I mean, it's got more power than a 357. I mean, it's got plenty of knockdown. And it's being a 1911, it's slim, it's easy to carry, things like that. I've enjoyed hunting with it. I just haven't had the opportunity to harvest anything with it yet.
It'll happen.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Now I have handgun hunted for years for small game and things like that, and I've harvested rabbits, squirrels, raccoons, possums, all sorts of things like that. I just didn't have the confidence until recently to go out and try it with a handgun. But we're fortunate enough here in Missouri to have multiple seasons that you can hunt. Yes. We've got we got archery season, but then we've got your modern firearms season, and then we've got an antlerless season. And they changed the muzzleloader season to alternate weapons season, which now includes handguns.
Oh,
so during the antlerless season and during the alternate season, I'll take my pistol, and I'll try to, and it'll happen one of these days. It's just it's definitely a goal of mine. I've shot deer with recurve bows, compounds, crossbows, muzzleloader, rifle. Just haven't been able to check the handgun off my list yet, but it's definitely a goal of mine. It's a lot of fun, and it's a different challenge.
It really is. To me, it's kind of like a close range challenge. I used to bow hunt many years ago, and I haven't bow hunted for a long time, but I get to enjoy that closeness. Of course, I could use a rifle, and my goal is always to get as absolutely critically close as I possibly can, regardless of what kind of firearm and I primarily hunt firearms these days, is try to get close. But with the revolvers that I'm shooting now, primarily 44 mag and the 454 Sioux, with those, I feel very comfortable to taking shots out to 100 yards because I know with the Hornady ammo that I'm using, they're extremely accurate, and I know what kind of downrange performance I get out of those. So,
Oh, sure.
but keep closer in than that 100 yards, unless there's just the only opportunity I have.
Yeah. Well, with my particular choice of handgun, and with the fact that there's no optic on it, and my eyes just aren't what they used to be, I limit myself to about 50 yards. But 50 yards is more than doable, and I'm sure you've probably hunted Missouri before. It's more than doable in the Ozark Hills of Missouri to get a 50-yard shot. That's actually a pretty long shot most of the time.
Yep.
I mean, I think, I've done a lot of bow hunting too, but I think the closest shot on a deer I've ever had was like 6 steps, and that was with a muzzleloader.
That
But yeah,
that's
you can get them pretty close.
Yes, you can. Like I said, I hunt with primary rifles. We used to do a lot of muzzleloader things as well too. And of course, you're right. I hunted Missouri numerous times in years past, and I've hunted from the very north and east and northwest corner all the way down to the southern part. Particularly years ago back when I was with the Bass Pro Redhead Pro hunting team, and during those years there too, we had an absolutely fantastic time. A lot of times rattling up bucks there in Missouri, which was always fun because in those hardwoods you could hear them coming as they're running on those dry leaves, and that gets to be exciting. You know they're coming, and you can't tell for sure exactly where you're going to step out, but when they do, as you mentioned, they're generally pretty close.
Oh yeah, and I've got limited experience with rattling. I think I've rattled in one buck, just because it's not something. I don't know. I guess it just wasn't super popular when I started hunting around here. And it's something that I just never used a lot, but I did rattle in one about 10 years ago. I'm not much for blind calling and that type of thing, although I'll do it occasionally. But when
Right.
I see something out in the distance to get it close, and I can remember I was hunting a buddy's farm, and I was sitting next to a big oak tree. It's opening day of gun season. And I just about dozed off, and I just lifted my head, and I caught a glimpse of a deer down in the bottom, and it's going away. So I grunted and kind of got its attention, and I hit that rattle bag, and it came in like it was on a string. And that the reaction, you're right. It's just that deer looked through me. It knew where the other deer was supposed to be, and it was paying no attention to me. It was looking for another deer.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I shot it at about 15, 20 yards with my 30-06. Not a real hard shot, but that was a pretty cool experience. And it was I think it was a 6-pointer with about a 12-inch spread. It wasn't nothing special. It was actually the biggest buck I'd ever killed at the time. But I mean, just the experience and watch them come in like that. And I've oh I've had quite a bit of experience with calling. Last fall, my daughter and I went the second weekend of firearms season, and we just had a doe come in behind us. She hasn't shot a deer yet, so I'm going to let her shoot anything that's legal.
Absolutely.
She didn't get a shot, and she's a little bit bummed about it. We're sitting there, and I could hear from the opposite direction a deer snorting. I'm like, man, something got our wind. I'm just going to do some calling and see what happens.
Right.
And I did some grunts and bleats and different things. And I looked, and here come a really nice buck, about probably a mid 130s buck.
That is a nice book.
And come up, it would have beat anything that I've taken on that farm for sure. Anyway, it comes up, and he gets behind some brush. He hangs up about 50 yards from us. Well, she sneaks behind me. We're sitting on a rock outcropping, and she sneaks behind me and gets in position, but she doesn't have a shot. And I snort wheezed at him as he was trying to walk away, just with my mouth. And he turned and walked right in, and she shot and missed. But it using the calls, whether it's rattling or grunts or bleats or whatever, it puts you in the game. It makes it more personal. It's a lot of fun.
It is a lot. As you well know, deer can be very vocal, particularly during that time frame when they're going into the rut. They'll be walking around. They're going, they're walking along, and they're same time. What they're doing is during that time frame, they're kind of posing their neck a little bit, moving their neck back and forth, and what they're saying is to all the does that are in that area, says, "Hey, I'm the sweetest lover in this part of the country. Come find me, by golly!" And same time, they're grunting to the bucks, and with kind of challenging them and letting them know that they're there. And then, as you mentioned, that kind of sound, that snort wheeze, that's the most aggressive sound. And I've watched two big old bucks kind of square off of each other, and their necks are bowed and their hair standing on end, and they're kind of circling around, and one will make that snort wheeze. And generally, one of two things happens: either that one buck that's been snort wheezed to, all his hair lays back down and he walks away because he thinks maybe he might get whipped, but if not, that fight is on generally. And they'll come together and clash those horns together really hard. And then they'll push around for a while. And finally, neither one wants to run, because he knows as soon as he turns, his backside is going to be filled with a bunch of antlers stuck up his backside. So interesting kind of thing, when you really kind of fun when you start watching them that way.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you're you're right. You get the opportunity to pay attention to the deer. You realize they are a lot more vocal than you think. I've done a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in early season, this time of year, over soybean fields and things, with my bow. And as the does come in with their fawns, and they're basically they're talking to each other back and forth constantly, balls and bleats, and they're a lot more vocal than you think they are.
They are. And the beauty of all that is too, is they're just like people. Not all deer sound exactly alike. Some of the biggest bucks I've ever listened to or was able to see and listen to what they were doing is they had a fairly high pitched voice as opposed to that really deep voice. And then too, sounds, because of sounds, I think deer are very curious. A lot of times they'll come into all kinds of different sounds. Many, many years ago, when they first came out with the grunt talk, my daughters would go hunting with me, and I'd tell them skate, now make a grunt. They go, and they wait a little bit, and go, And next thing I know, they're getting bored, so they're playing the itsy bitsy spider on the grunt call. And of course, all during this time when we were doing it properly, nothing showed up. As soon as they started doing a song on the grunt tube, the deer would start showing up. So they are really curious as well too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I remember this has been several years ago, but I was bow hunting over soybean field, and right at dark, probably about 100 yards, a buck came in, and this was mid late October, when they're just starting to do a little sniffing and chasing and things like that, but the rut's not in full swing or anything. And I grunted at him with a mature grunt, and you could tell he heard it, but he wasn't interested at all.
No.
I took the call apart, moved the O-ring down to a young butt, grunted at him, and then he came just all bristled up, and it was amazing that just changing that tone, making it a little higher pitched, changed his attitude.
Well, he needed to respect his elders, by golly. When he heard a little bit deeper sound, he assumed probably it was indeed a mature buck, and he probably didn't want any part of that buck.
Yeah, it was interesting. I ended up not getting a shot, but I was able to call him in pretty close. It was just interesting, the reaction. And another call that I've had, I watched a video years ago, and I don't even remember who made it. Something that I've had luck with in the past, and I don't know if I haven't heard of anybody else doing this, but it's basically just like spitting something off of your tongue, just and I had never heard it before. It was on a hunting video I watched.
Yeah,
And
they'll
I've
make.
done that once or twice and actually gotten deer to come into it. But as I think about it, it almost sounds like when they're snorting and warning you. So I don't know what the deal is with that.
Well, as we were talking about, deer make all kinds of sounds. I'm sure they're making sounds that probably are ultrasonic a little bit compared to what we get to hear sometimes too. But they're really curious, and that really kind of helps the matter too. Of them responding to grunt calls, and again, like I said, they're very individual in terms of their tone. So some of those really big bucks, even though you think they might have a very gruff, deep voice, may not have it. Although generally that's the case. Usually the older the buck, the gruffer the sound he'll make.
For sure, for sure. Um, I think some of the most fun I've ever had calling though is probably around mid-October when the does have started to kick the button bucks out of the
Yeah,
nest and things like that. And a button buck will respond to almost any call at all, and they're really fun to watch.
they are.
I
They're
mean,
looking. Hey, mama, what you do this to me to our migrations? And so they're looking for company. And so you're right. They will respond quite frequently even when other things don't really want to seem like they want to come into you.
yeah, and it's fun to watch them because they're super. I mean, they're little kids, and they're super curious. And a friend of mine actually had a video where he got one close enough to pet it. It's just so funny that the deer knows that something's not right, and is looking around and sniffing, and he's patting it on its head. And I mean, it's hilarious. They really, that's why so many of them don't make it to the next year, because
You're right.
they don't have their mother around anymore to protect them, and they're so curious and they know nothing. But if they make it past that first year, they've seen so much. I think that's part of what makes bucks harder to hunt, is just that first year.
You're right. If they can
If
make it
they've
through
made
that
it through that,
they'll do well. It's amazing too. Once buck matures, I've watched bucks until the time in the southern where I part of the country, they usually mature at 4.5. In Missouri and on up, they have a tendency to mature body wise at 3.5. But what happens a lot of time, I've watched those bucks just be total dummies until they reach that maturity, and then as their antlers start growing for that third or fourth year, it's like they're having a drink of water, and they look down and see a reflection, and all of a sudden everything changes about them, from being big doofuses and getting in all kinds of sticky situations. Now all of a sudden they're extremely wary. It's almost kind of like they're backing up, looking around and listening and paying attention. So once they get into that mature stage, they become a totally different deer, particularly when it comes to hunting them.
oh yeah, for sure. And that's something. I mean, I grew up, as a meat hunter mostly, and I think most of us start that way.
Right.
And I'm still, I'm not one of these guys that solely chases mature bucks and things like that. I just assume shoot a bunch of slickheads as anything else. Um, but I've had the opportunity, and I've gotten better at hunting to kill several mature bucks over the last few years, and it really is. It's just a complete different. It's a different animal
It,
altogether.
they are totally different animals. Not all of them. I mean, they're, again, I equate deer to people. There's some people that are extremely smart, and there's some that are, most of them, kind of in the middle, and then there's some on the lower end that probably aren't quite that smart, And the unfortunate thing for those in the deer world is they generally do not survive very long.
No, they don't. They don't. And you know, it makes a lot of difference as to what type of property you're hunting. If you're hunting East Coast public land where everybody and their brothers out there chasing them, or you're hunting uh, a managed 50,000 acre ranch in South Texas, there's a difference in how mature the animal actually has to be to survive.
You're right. You're right.
I mean, not that it makes it that much easier, things like that. And I certainly don't, you know, I'm not belittling anybody hunting on that. I'm envious
No,
if
no, no.
anybody get to hunt on that type of ranch, but I hunt a lot of public land myself. And early season, you know, it's not so bad. There's not a lot of pressure. Once firearm season opens up, it seems like as soon as they start hearing doors shut and horns honk and things like that, they know what's going on. And the patterns change almost instantly. How far they stray from bedding changes, um, and things like that. Like I said, I hunt a lot of public land, and where during bow season, I can hunt 100 yards from where I park my truck and have pretty good successes seeing deer. When firearm season opens, if I'm not a mile in, I'm not seeing anything.
Exactly. Yeah, they'll change their patterns. The other thing, years ago there was a study done in Kansas, and it was there was a national wildlife refuge, and of course everybody thought as soon as the first shot was fired, all the mature bucks would go into that sanctuary where they couldn't be hunted. So they radio collared like 10 or 15 mature bucks, and then they also radio collared for tracking purposes the hunters that hunted that area and had hunted that area for a long time. Interesting, what they found out was is those bucks that went back and forth into the no hunting area continued doing the same thing, but those that lived right on the edge that didn't go into it when hunting season started, they did not change their patterns. But what they found was is a lot of times because of hunting pressure, those deer quickly adapted to that hunting pressure. And there were numerous times where really good mature bucks and hunters were within about 6 to 7 feet of each other. And of course, the deer probably knew the hunter was there, but the hunter did not know the deer was there. The deer was just bedded with his head on the ground in a little bit of a thicket. So they learned to adapt to that hunting pressure pretty darn quickly, or they have to survive.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I've got a I've got a spot. It's not very far here from my house. I'm fortunate. Missouri has quite a bit of public land to hunt. I don't own any property myself. I've got a little bit of permission here and there to hunt some places,
Right.
but but you know that changes from year to year and whatnot. So public land is always my go-to,
Absolutely.
and I've got a spot. I think it's about 4,000 acres. Um, about 20 minutes from my house, which is really convenient. And I've hunted it off and on for over 20 years. I hadn't hunted it real seriously till I moved to where I'm at now. I live the closest I've ever lived to this piece of property. So in the last few years, I've gotten pretty serious about it. And I've taken a couple of mature bucks over the last couple of years over it. But I found this place just by map scouting. I looked at it and I'm thinking, well, if I was a deer and all these hunters are coming in during firearm season, where would I want to be? And there's an old clear cut about 20 years ago. They clear cut several hundred acres, and it's just thick as a dog's hind leg, or it's dog's hair. You know, it's just thick, and it butts up against a creek bottom with three or four draws intersecting into it.
Perfect.
And it's just there's bedding covered, there's water, there's oaks, there's food, and it's just the perfect storm of consequence of circumstances there. And I can hunt it early season, I can hunt it late season, and I'm going to see deer. But if I hunt that during the highest pressure, like opening day, things like that,
Right.
there's rarely a time more than a half an hour that I'm not seeing a deer come through there.
That makes
It, it makes for exciting hunting, and it's just it's one of those special places that you just don't always get to find.
no, no, no. Hmm.
I mean, it's pretty interesting. I don't know. I killed an 8-pointer there last year. He's busted up. He scored low 120s, I think. But when I took him to the I'm in a CWD zone, so if you shoot
Right.
them during opening weekend of firearm season, you've got to go get them tested. And when I took him there to get it tested, they estimated about 6.5 years old. I don't know how true that was, but
Obviously, he was an older, mature deer, though. That makes it even more interesting.
oh yeah, like I said, as I've become a better hunter, as I've gotten, I never really started focusing on mature deer, but as I matured as a hunter, I got on them more and more, if that makes
Exactly.
sense.
It does
Um,
make.
and it's a lot of fun. I mean, get into a little different arena here. Um, I am not. I mean, I study them, but I'm not an experimenter much when it comes to cartridges. I've been shooting a 30-06 since I was 16 years old, and I've rarely strayed from it. I've had a little bit of experience with 35 Remington and a 300 short mag. I've killed a few deer with those. I'm going to hunt with I'm going to hunt with a 100-year-old 30-30 this year and
Fantastic.
try to kill something with that. But you've had a lot of experiences with different cartridges, rifles, handguns, things like that. Do you have any favorites, or is it just if it works, it works?
There's so many great cartridges. And of course, we're continually adding some of the new things like the PRC cartridges, and of course 6.5 Creedmoor has become really popular. The only 6.5 that's ever been really popular in the U.S., even though they've been very popular over in Europe. You mentioned 30-06. 30-06 has been a standard for many, many years. And I just got off a pronghorn hunt where I used a Ruger #1 top with a Trijicon scope, and I was shooting 178 grain. I'm sorry, Horned D ELDX. Great combination in for whitetail deer, for pronghorn antelope, or mule deer, and with the rifles, the 30-06, the 280, 270. I love some of the older cartridges as well too, like the 7x57 and the 257 Roberts. As I've gotten older, I've kind of drifted away, even though I occasionally use some of the new Zip Zam Zoomers. I have a tendency to go back to some of the older cartridges when it comes to rifles. With handguns, the two primary ones that I shoot more than anything else are a 44 mag and a 454. So both these are now, and I'm shooting primarily in a Taurus Rage and Hunter, but uh, those two, I feel comfortable out, as I said, taking the shots out to 100 yards with the red dot scopes that I use, the SRO sights. But those two are probably my favorite when it comes to the handguns. There's some really good other handgun cartridges out there, and I feel like probably the minimum that we ought to be using for most of us, unless you're really an expert with the gun, is is that 44 mag. The 357 mag is a really good cartridge. Of course, 11 millimeter is a great cartridge as well too. As long as you know the limitations of your abilities with that handgun and the limitations of that handgun cartridge to downrange and as far as accuracy concerned. But going back to the rifles, there's some fantastic rifle cartridges out there. I've shot a lot of stuff with the 375 Ruger. Actually, hunted the world with it, and if I had came down to having only one round or one particular rifle that same for one cartridge to hunt everything from dangerous game in Africa to in Europe and all over North America, including the big bears and moose and the elk and all that kind of stuff, it would probably be the 375 Ruger. It's an amazing cartridge, not that much different from the 375 H&H, which is old time standard. But as far as the newer cartridge is concerned, if I had to pick one that I was going to do everything with, that would probably be it, is the 375 Ruger.
Yeah, I years ago I deer hunted with a guy that had dreams of going to Africa and Alaska, and had bought a Browning A-bolt stainless stalker in 375 Holland and Holland.
Oh yes, sir.
And that was his only center fire rifle. He deer hunted with it. He shot coyotes with it. And everybody says, well, it's a little bit of overkill, but dead's
No.
dead. Dead's dead.
Exactly. To me, there's no such thing as an overkill kind of thing. I've shot deer with everything from 50 caliber muzzleloaders, 54 caliber muzzleloaders, or shotgun slugs and all that kind of thing as well too. And but a lot of the like the 277, 284, 30 caliber, most all those with a well-constructed bullet that opens up when it gets into the body cavity, so there's a controlled expansion kind of thing, does the job very nicely, particularly when it comes to whitetail deer. Whatever is comfortable to you to shoot. I think that's kind of more than anything else. Some people are recall senses, are conscious, or some are. I think more people are more afraid of the sound that a gun makes. So with the although I don't use suppressors, I do use hearing protection now, though I can't hear that well anymore. Waited too long, but at the same time, with the advances that we're seeing in suppressors and all that kind of thing, there's no reason not to shoot a really good cartridge, maybe a little bit more powerful than you normally would, because with that suppressor, not only does it suppress the sound, but it also suppresses the recoil as well too.
Oh yeah, and there's some guys here in Missouri, since it's been legalized, slowly going towards suppressors and things like that. It's really not my bag, but whatever makes you more comfortable. I'm a firm believer in that. And honestly, like I mentioned, that guy with the 375 Holland and Holland, I couldn't tell that I shot 30-06 with 150 grain bullets, and I thought it tore up meat more than his 375 did. So
I'm sure that's exactly right, because for the most part, that your bullet was traveling quite fast, and like those 375 H&H, most time those bullets may be traveling 2,400 feet per second, as opposed to 28 or 26, 28. Some of them may be traveling 2,200 feet per second. And with the way those bullets are built, they're a little bit stouter bullets, so they do open up, but they may not cause that tremendous amount of tissue damage that you get out of a 165 or 180 grain 30 caliber bullet that's traveling, say, 2,800 feet per second or better.
Sure. And that was an experience I had with my 30. I had a 35 Remington for a period of time, a Remington 760 pump, and it excellent gun.
Yeah.
And I killed a couple of bucks with it, but that 35 Remington, not a lot of recoil. It's 35 caliber bullet, 35 caliber 200 grain bullet. I was using Hornady, the Lever Evolution with their flex tip bullet.
Yeah.
And just good blood trails, not a lot of meat damage. It's a great cartridge. I just always end up going back to 30-06. But that was a excellent for woods distances and things. I mean, just a phenomenal cartridge. I'm not sure why it hasn't taken over more of the market than the 30-30, to be honest with you. It's just never been quite as popular, but it's a really underrated cartridge.
It really is. I've shot them in handguns, and of course, you mentioned the lever actions and then single shots as well too. And I think it's just because the fact of timing, probably more than anything else, is that more people shot the old 30-30, and it did extremely well, and it came out at the right time, at the right place, and folks kind of glommed onto it for a long, long time. That's when my dad shot, my father-in-law shot more than anything else. They had other guns, but when it came right back down to it, they'd grab that old Winchester Model 94 and a handful of ammo, and away they'd go. And it took lots of deer with it, by golly.
Well, and you didn't even have to grab a handful of ammo because it holds 6 in the tube and 1 in.
Right.
I mean, I've got a Winchester 94 that I've had for a few years now, and I put I can't hardly shoot the plain open sights anymore. I put I think it's a lineman tang sight on it, and
Right.
it shoots really, really good. But this year I found a no drill mount for those old rifles where I can mount a long eye relief scope.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm going to Dr. Pearson's, I think's what it's called. It's an aluminum Picatinny rail that it mounts on the dovetail of the front sight, and then one of the receiver screws comes out, and then you screw it into that, so
Right.
it makes it good and solid there. And I never liked the side mounts,
No.
and I'm going
Like,
to put that on there. I'm going to put a 2.5 power long eye relief scope, and that's going to be my primary rifle this year, because I know I don't need I don't need much distance. Plus, I mean, a 30-30 is kind of underrated too.
you're right.
If you've practiced with it, 150 yards isn't any trouble at all, and a lot of guys can make a 200-yard shot with it.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
So I'm going to hunt with that, and I'm pretty excited about that. I've never harvested a deer with a 30-30. I've owned several of them. But that's just to take that old rifle. It was built in 1902. To take that old rifle out and breathe it new life again. And that'll be. I've hunted with it a few times with that tang sight, but where I hunt, I tend to get a lot of low light shots, and I just haven't had opportunities because of that. So I'm wanting to put that long eye relief scope on it, so I get a little better chance. Give me a few more minutes to hunt.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting for sure. That just
To use that old rifle would be special just in itself.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like you're saying, all the new cartridges and things out there, the old classics are just, like I said, I've hunted with 30-06 since I was 16. I'm 41 now. And the third, I've used the 35 Remington. I dabbled with the 300 short mag, and honestly, that's an excellent cartridge. It never took off quite as well as I thought it would. It really is a great cartridge, but it just the old classics. I hunt with a lot of my family members use 270, 308, just the old standards mostly.
Fantastic.
And there's a reason that those have lasted so long. It's because there's just they
You're
work.
exactly right. They work. They do everything that needs to be done. And again, like we were talking about earlier, I find myself drifting more and more all the time, even though I shoot some of the newer stuff. When it comes to the actual hunting that I do for myself, unless I have to field test a rifle or cartridge or something, it's usually is 270, 280, 30-06. I shoot an 0405 Winchester every once in a while as well too, that I dearly love. And like I said, that 7x57, that's one heck of a cartridge as well too. And on the 6.5 stuff, excuse me, for years I've been shooting the 6.5 by 55 Swede. which can
Mhm.
do thing that excuse me, that the Creedmoor can do, and actually can probably do a little bit better in terms of velocity if you do any hand loading or anything like that. But there's some heck of a good cartridges out there that have been around for a while. And of course, part of the game is I always come up with something new to keep people interested and get somebody to buy a new rifle and going instead of going, well, this has been good for me for the last 30 years. What I need a new gun for, kind of thing. So
Well,
we need
sure, sure.
cartridges every once in a while.
Oh yeah, and yeah, and I like to read up on the new cartridges and things
Oh,
like that, and I'll buy a gun in the new cartridge and I'll try it out and whatnot, and then trade it for something else. You always hawk one hobby for another one, and it's a lot of fun to play it. But when it comes, I'm with you when it comes down to my hunting, I know what's worked for me in the past, and I keep using it. The big reason that I went with 30-06 when I was 16 was that 75% of the guys I hunted with used a 30-06. My dad shot 30-06.
yes,
That
sir.
way, him and I, he's 16 years old. You don't have a lot of money. Him and I could split a box of shells, and that'd last us a couple of years.
Exactly.
Um, and it just made sense. You could, of course, with the ammo shortages, this isn't the case anymore. But 30-06, 30-30, 270, 243 cartridges like that, you could buy at any little sporting goods shop. I mean, down in Southeast Missouri, where my family's from, you could buy them at the local gas stations and whatnot. You
Exactly.
could
Yes, sir.
always find ammo. The worst thing happened, you forgot yours. You didn't get to quite the right bullet weight, so you had to shoot it once to make sure you were on. That'd be the worst thing happened. You could always find ammo. And that's been my biggest thing with the cartridges I've picked is I always want to pick something that's popular everywhere I hunt.
Exactly. I've been on hunts up north several years ago. We're on a caribou hunt, and you mentioned the 300 sharp mag, and the guy had a custom rifle made for 300 sharp mag, and somehow on the flight up he lost his ammo, and we get in. He said, no big deal." And said, "Whenever we fly in the outpost, little trading post," he says, "I'll just pick up some ammo there." So we walk in. The guy goes, "I want some 300 uh, uh, Winchester Shark mag," and the guy hands him a 300 Win mag. He said, "Here you go." And the guy goes, "No, no, no, this is not the Shark mag." He said, "I don't know what you're talking about. This is only 300 mag we have up here." So he ended up, he had a club. That
Yeah,
rifle did not make a real good club, and thankfully, I had taken two rifles up because I was field testing the second rifle, and so he ended up having to hunt caribou not with his rifle that he'd had custom made for that particular trip, but with one that I had that happened to be in a 30-06, and of course I had extra ammo as well too. But he could have bought 30-06 ammo there at that little outpost.
sure, sure. Well, yeah, I heard I'm not into it anymore. I was into hand loading for a while, and I thought about Wildcat cartridges and things, but I read an article about a guy that shot one of the JDJ cartridges. I don't remember what it was, but in a handgun, and he went on a hunt, and somewhere along the line, security or whatever at the airport had confiscated his ammunition. So when he got there, he's shooting a Wildcat cartridge. Unless he can find a hand loader, there's nobody that's got ammo.
No, a lot of those JDJ cartridges, you had to do a bunch of neck sizing on those too, because like at 375 would start out with a 444, and you'd have to start out with a 40. You have to get Kenyan neck down. I shoot a 309 JDJ a fair amount, and there was no 309 JDJ ammo anywhere to be found other than what you created or took with you, kind of thing. And so during those same time frames when we're talking about the 30-30, a lot of times I'd take a 309 JDJ handgun, but also take my 30-30 contender handgun. And So I knew I could find some 30-30 ammo if something happened to the other kind and I couldn't find it.
Well, yeah, and the great thing about the contenders and encores is you could stash an extra barrel and have that
You could do too.
ability. Yeah, I always thought that those were pretty neat. But it, like I said, I mean, I've shot, shot deer with slugs and different things. But just availability has been my biggest thing, and then also without I've got a young daughter and whatnot, not having a lot of time. When the new cartridges come out, I'm usually a little leery till they've been out a little while as to if they're gonna last.
Exactly.
Because you spend a hefty amount of money on a rifle, and you buy a few hundred rounds of ammunition that'll only last you so long. If they quit manufacturing it, you can't find it anymore. It becomes a hand loading proposition. You can't even sell the gun because nobody makes ammo for
Exactly. Exactly. It becomes an interesting club, as I mentioned earlier.
it. Exactly. I had I don't know if you're familiar with it, a 22 TCM.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's basically a 9mm Luger
Right.
neck down to 22. It really, really neat rifle, and it was a great varmint rifle. But I was just, nobody picked it up for ammo. You could only find arms core ammo, which it was fairly available. But I was just scared to death they were going to quit making it. And I found a guy that wanted it, and he had something I wanted, and we swapped. Um, but it was a good cartridge. It really doesn't do anything that the 22 Hornet doesn't do. But it was a good cartridge. Just I don't know. That's just my personal thing. A lot of guys are, well, no big deal. I'll buy a set of dies, and that's just I need another something else to occupy my time. Like I need a hole in my head. Um,
I was
so
like, for years ago, I did reloading columns and all that kind of thing, writing. And then finally, I came to the realization that everything that I was loading for at the time, particularly in terms of the higher end quality bullets, now the manufacturers of those or that ammunition was doing the same thing. And by doing a little bit of tweaking and kind of checking around and maybe trying several different loads, I could come up with something that was every bit as good as what my hand loading was. Yes, it was a little bit cheaper to do the hand loading or the reloading, but until you factored in time, and when you started factoring in time, I found that it was a whole lot better for me to sit down and write a magazine article about actual hunting than to try to sit there and develop a load. And I could make money during that time frame instead of spending money, and knowing that I would have a great load when it was finished. But at the same time, again, the bullets I was loading for, I could go down to the local hardware store or gun store or wherever, and I could buy those loads. So it just became more economical for me to do it that way. And again, everything I was loading for, I could buy. So there wasn't any real reason for me to try to develop any more loads compared to
sure,
the quality that I was getting out of the commercial loads.
sure. And my dad and I used to dabble in it, like I said, and he did a lot of handgun reloading, mostly 38 special, um, just target loads, wad cutter loads, which are actually, you don't think of using the 38 special for hunting much, but a wad cutter in a 38 special is an excellent small game load.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir.
And there've been a lot of squirrels and rabbits and things shot with those, and they're fairly quiet, no recoil. I mean, I shot my mom's 686 with those 38 special wad cutter loads when I was 6, 7 years old. I
Cool.
had trouble holding the gun and reaching the trigger, but the recoil wasn't an issue at all.
Right.
And we dabbled in that, and then he got into, we did a lot of trap shooting and dove hunting, and we started reloading shotgun shells. And like you said, it's the time. We could make you could make a double A equivalent load for the price of the promotional shells. But
Right.
when you figured in all your time, we'd sit there the night before dove season opened. We'd sit there the last day of August in the
Right.
basement for 3 or 4 hours, loading us each 4 or 5 boxes of shells, and it was fun. But some of that time would have been spent better just sleeping and then getting up the next morning fresh hunting.
You're exactly right. You're exactly
Yeah,
right.
but it was fun. It
Oh,
was a lot of fun. And to come up with different things, and it does add a little bit to your hunt, whether it's a dove hunt or a deer hunt or a coyote hunt, knowing that you made the ammunition, and things like that. But if I really want to scratch my hand loading itch, I fiddle with my loads on my muzzle loader.
yes.
It's the same thing. Try different bullets, try different powders, try different powder charges, different primers even make a difference. um and you've got to do that anyway because it's a muzzle
Right.
loader.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The most
And that's
thing
something I really enjoy too, is that inline muzzle loader I've got.
I did a lot of things years ago with Tony Knight when Tony first came out with the MK85, the first modern kind of inline muzzleloader. There were, people say, well, the first one. No, there were other guns that were inline muzzleloaders years ago, but he really kind of popularized that, and that was during a time frame too. After I did a lot of stuff with Tony, hunting different places, hunting with. Then I did some promotional work for Thompson Center, and there we had, of course, the Encore and 209 by 50, and uh, and then sort of the Omega and all those other kind of things. And those are, you're right. The muzzleloading thing is a lot of fun compared to when I first started with it years ago. You just had black powder, and you'd smell up the bathroom because of you had to wash that dead gum barrel out, and usually in the bathtub, which made everybody in the house unhappy because that acrid smell. But then we started getting things like Pyrodex and some of the other powder substitutes that we have now, made a lot of difference. And of course, made shooting those muzzleloaders a whole lot more fun than it used to be many years ago.
Oh yeah. Well, I've got an Omega. I've had it for years. But I started with a cap lock, side lock. I think it was called a Traditions Deer Hunter. It was something, I don't know. The dad ordered it out of Bass Pro, and it was fairly inexpensive at the time. And it had a dog leg hammer, and you could actually mount a scope on it, but it was a side
Right.
lock. And I don't know how many deer between that and an old CVA I had that lived to the next day, because when I pulled the trigger, the cap snapped and the gun didn't go off. And that was that was my problem. I didn't clean the gun properly, whatever, but it got to be really annoying. So I went to the inline. I bought that Omega,
Right.
and now with the new powders like Blackhorn 209 and that kind of stuff, it's I hunt I'll hunt. There's a lot of areas here in Missouri that only allow muzzleloader and archery,
Yes, sir.
and I'll hunt them during the regular firearm season with my muzzleloader, and I don't feel undergunned at all.
No, 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 no. I would not either. Yeah,
Mm.
the muzzleloader thing has come a long way. I've only on occasion used a flintlock many years ago, and missed an opportunity because the when the hammer hit the frisbee, it went instead of bang, and I swore off not long after that, after missing a great opportunity to monster black bear up in Maine. That I'm glad I didn't live in the time when you were required to shoot those kind of guns. I could be shoot, the inlines or a better cap lock than I could that flintlock. So I kind of stepped away from that particular gun.
Yeah, yeah, and I've always thought it'd be neat to have a flintlock, but I don't know if it's anything I'd ever want to hunt with. But that modern inline, just fact is, I'm going to go on I got drawn for a managed hunt in Arkansas this year,
All right.
in mid October, and I'm going to hunt with it this year. And it's just going to be something different. I've talked to some buddies in this Arkansas. It's not exactly known for big bucks. I said, well, they're there, but
Yes.
it's the experience more than anything. I haven't hunted out of state since my daughter was born. She's 11 years old, so this is going to be the first out of state hunt in a long time.
It's time.
It's going to be a lot. It's just going to be a lot of fun. I had a buddy in the Army that lived on a farm in Pike County, Illinois, and I used to get to go over there and hunt. But like I said, I haven't hunted there in years, and I haven't hunted out of state in years. It's just going to be a fun experience. I'm going to camp the whole time. It's a 5-day hunt. I'm going to camp, and I can kill 2 deer, a buck and a doe. There's also hogs there where I'm going to be hunting, and it'll be just a neat experience and something that I can't do here, you know.
You're right. You're right. Oh, that'll be absolutely fantastic. To me, the out-of-state hunts like that are so good anyway, because sometimes where I get to hunt, I don't hunt that terribly far away from home. And of course, while I'm out in the deer stand or hunting, I'm also thinking about, I could be doing this at home, should be doing this at home. But when you get stuff away from it, you can put all that aside and go, well, I'll do all that when I get back, because right now I'm going to concentrate on hunting, because I can't just jump in the car and go back to the house and get it done.
Exactly. When you get far enough that you can't just turn around and go home,
Right.
it takes a lot of pressure off of you. I mean, like I said, I've got a spot on public land here that's only 20 minutes from the house. And I'll be sitting there in my stand thinking, well, I need to do this when I get home. I need to do this. And sometimes you just end up, you worry about it so much, you just pack up and go home and take care of it. But you can't do that when you're out of state. It's going to be, it's just going to be a good, relaxing time. Something that I just haven't been able to do for a long time. Like I said, when I was in the Army, I had a buddy that his mother-in-law had a farm in Pike County, Illinois, and I used to get to hunt over there some, and mostly just doe patrol and culling, but it's still, just to be able to get to hunt in a different place was a lot of fun.
Amen.
And to see, I've heard that Pike County is not quite as good as it used to be, but at the time it was kind of in its mecca, and to see the quality of deer that were there, it was, I haven't gotten, I've hunted a handful of states. I've hunted Tennessee, Illinois, Missouri, and I've gotten to do a lot of travel with my Army time and stuff like that, but I didn't get to do a lot of hunting in different places.
Right.
Be able to just see different things like that. I'm hoping one of these days, I got a buddy in Wyoming, and I'm hoping to go out there and hunt something with him. I don't care what it is, even if it's a prairie dog hunt.
Those are fun too.
Yeah, I've always been told they were. Now you're from Texas, correct?
That's right. Yes, sir.
Yes. So now East Texas, West Texas, Texas is a huge state and a lot of different terrain.
It is. We're very blessed in that respect, in that we have everything from piney woods to Gulf Coast prairie to rolling hills to far west Texas, where we do have, I think we do have one mountain peak that's right at about 9,000 or 10,000 feet. So we've got a little bit of everything in between, and we've got a great variety of game species, with whitetail deer being the predominant one, and then the mule deer and the pronghorn kind of in the west and the northwest. But we've got great opportunity in Texas as well too. The fortunate thing, or unfortunate, is that Texas is about 98% privately owned. So hunting done on leases, but we do have some absolutely fantastic public land to hunt as well too. So there are lots of different opportunities to hunt. And our whitetail seasons are pretty darn liberal. We've got several different seasons set up based upon what the populations are in different areas as far as whitetail deer are concerned. But generally, our bow season starts the 1st of October and runs that month. And then the regular rifle season usually kicks in the first Saturday in November and runs through usually the end of December, into the second week of December. But then also we have what we call the managed land deer permit, which is on private land. If the managed property or the property is set up under a management program with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, they determine the number of bucks and does that should be taken off that property each year. So those hunting seasons run the concurrent with all the hunting seasons that we have. So essentially they start October 1st and end the end of February. So long time to hunt, and great opportunity. The beauty of the MLD tags, the managed land permit tags, is they do not count against the tags that you have on your hunting license and your general license. So it's in Texas, where depends on who you know and where you hunt. You can take a substantial number of deer each year.
Yeah. Well, here in Missouri, we can harvest. You get $2 with your $2 tags, right, with your bow. You can only take one before gun season. You can take one during gun season, but you can only take a total of 2. So if you kill one with your bow and one with your gun, you're done. You can take a total of 2. You used to be able to use 3, but now it's 2. But you can shoot antlerless deer. Most counties allow 2 with a firearm and unlimited with archery equipment. Really? So you can, depending on where you're at, you can hunt. If you've got places to hunt throughout the state, you've got a lot of opportunities, right, to be able to take $2 if you hunt with archery equipment. Is nice as well. It's not quite as liberal as Texas, right, but the management program is completely different than what Texas does as well. And like you said, it's not there's a lot more public land percentage wise, yes, here in Missouri. That's something I've always wanted to do, was hunt places somewhere in Texas, and I didn't really care where. I mean, I've always seen the West Texas and the Senderos and everything. Right. That's always looked really cool. I recently finished reading a book called Prince of Poachers.
Yes.
So you're familiar with that?
I am a little bit, yeah.
I just recently read that. It's about a man that spent like 30 years poaching deer off the King and Kennedy ranches, and finally got caught back in the 90s and gave it up. But I certainly don't promote poaching, but it's just an interesting story.
Yes.
And you hear about the King Ranch and the Kennedy Ranch and the romance of those big ranches in Texas, and then you see the pictures of the big deer. And I mean, I grew up watching guys like you and Keith Warren and whatnot hunting in Texas and killing monster bucks, and then all the exotics that are available in Texas.
You're right. We're either, depends on your perspective, we're either cursed or blessed with a tremendous number of game species, and they're not really game species. They're here in Texas. If the animal is not endemic, then it is considered an exotic, which means there are no hunting seasons, there are no bag limits. You still need to have permission from the landowner to hunt them, but we've got a tremendous number of different species, both from Europe and Asia, and also, of course, from Africa as well too, that are on some of the exotic places, the high fence places. But a lot of those places too, the fences have come down, and now we have free range axis deer, fallow deer, red stag, aoudad, black buck antelope. I mean, tremendous number of free range exotic species scattered around the state. And too, some of those are found on some of the state management areas, so there are opportunities there to hunt them. But with that being the case, and then of course we have tremendous number of wild hogs as well too. So
Yeah.
we're a rather target rich environment in Texas when it comes to anything having to do with hunting. Of course, great small game hunting as well too, and waterfowl and as you mentioned, upland game. We've got some really good quail hunting in certain areas, great pheasant hunting in other areas. Turkey hunts are phenomenal. We've got both the eastern wild turkey and the eastern part of the state, and then the tremendous number of Rio Grande turkeys scattered out throughout the rest of the state as well too, and waterfowl because the coast and
Oh yeah.
and then the grain fields. I mean, there is tremendous waterfowl hunting of just about anything that you'd want to hunt in terms of ducks or geese is available here in Texas.
Oh yeah. One you didn't mention was nilgai. That's something
Oh
that,
yeah, still guy down south. Yes, sir.
yeah, and I believe that those were brought out onto the King Ranch, but they've gotten out and they're kind of all over South Texas now. But yeah, just you're right. You've got a lot of different things. We do have feral hogs here in Missouri, but Missouri's conservation department has an eradication program, and they've decided that on public lands, incidental take during deer season is okay if you've got an unfilled deer tag, but other
Right.
than that, you're not allowed to hunt them. And they're not widely spread throughout the state either, like Texas.
Right.
But yeah, it's something that I would enjoy doing, and one of these days maybe I'll plan something down there, even like a dove hunt or something, just to, like I said, it's about the experience, and everything is just the amount of terrain and whatnot, with the state being so large. I mean, Missouri has a varied amount of terrain, but nothing like Texas. I mean, you're in southeast Missouri or southwest Missouri, and you're in the big rolling hills and things like that, and then up north it's more plains, but it's a completely different than. I mean, you've got deserts and mountains, and you've got wooded terrain like we've got here, and you can hunt all over the world and never leave Texas.
You're literally correct in terms of species, in terms of habitat. When you get right down to it, probably the only type of habitat we don't have is that above timberline that you run into in Wyoming and Colorado and Idaho and Montana kind of thing. But yeah, between the coastal prairies where the nilgai lives down there in the very southern part of the tip, and to up in the panhandle where we've got a really good mule deer and elk population and pronghorn population. And then far west Texas, you've got mule deer and elk and whitetail. And of course, we have a pretty good desert mule deer, of course, but also a pretty good population of desert bighorn sheep out there now, and lots of aoudad that are free ranging. And the eastern part of the state's a lot of whitetails and a few exotics. And then the central part of the state, in the Texas Hill Country, there's not a whole lot of species that exist in the world that you can't find there in one place or another.
Sure. Yeah. This just came into my mind. I was thinking about it. I'm pretty sure it was from an article you wrote years ago concerning learning to shoot left-handed and right-handed.
Yes.
That was a completely foreign concept to me. And I took my 22 and my single shotgun that I had at the time. I was a teenager, and I went out and I'm not real good, but I taught myself to shoot both handed, and that has saved more than one hunt.
Yes, sir. What happened?
I think you'd said that you had a deer come up on your weak side and you didn't get a shot, so you taught yourself to shoot left-handed or something like that.
exactly what happened. I was sitting in a big old oak tree and hunting with my dad's small 94 30, and I shot right-handed, and a deer came up on the right side, and there just simply was no way to get a shot right-handed. And so as soon as that deer left and the morning hunt was over with, I ran back to the house and grabbed a 22, and I taught myself how to shoot left-handed and right-handed. And somebody would say, "Well, aren't you right eye dominant?" And I said, "Well, I was, but when my right eye is closed, guess what? My left eye is dominant." So I taught myself how to shoot left-handed and right-handed, both with a handgun, pistol, or with a handgun, with a rifle, and a shotgun. And over the years, particularly in a big game hunting situation with deer, now I can be set up, and it doesn't make any difference whether the deer comes in from the left or the right. All I got to do is switch over from one side to the other, and I'm ready to take that animal. So it's something to consider if you're going to try to do a whole lot of hunting, and or maybe you have a limited amount of time that you can hunt. It might behoove somebody to learn how to shoot both left and right. And again, like I said, you might be left eye dominant. If you are, close that left eye and keep your right eye open, and your right eye will be dominant, and you can shoot from the right side, or vice versa.
Exactly. And we used to even just just as a challenge shooting clay birds and
Oh,
shoot left-handed and things like that. And it just, you build some muscle memory and whatnot. And I dislocated my right shoulder years ago and had to hunt that year left-handed. Things like that, injuries happen, whatnot. Deer
yes.
come up on the wrong side of your blind and whatever. It is a useful skill. And since I read that article, I've preached that to my buddies, and most of the time it falls on deaf ears. But every now and then they're in a situation where they're like, "Well, you were right. I should." And when you're in your stand and the deer shows up, that's not the time to learn.
No. It's a good idea to learn beforehand.
Yeah, and it's just I won't say it's second nature or anything, but it has saved a few hunts of mine over the years.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, obviously, given choice, I'd rather shoot right-handed, but
Right.
if I
Right.
have to, and that's something that's always stuck with me. And I've never heard too many people mention that as a useful skill, but it can, like you said, if you have limited time or whatever. I mean, the average guy that deer hunts, I'd say most guys are gun hunters and not archery
Right.
hunters. So that limits your time quite a bit. Like here in Missouri, we've got just a little over a week for firearms season.
Yes, sir.
And most guys work a full-time job. So
Right.
you've got 4 days to hunt. And if on that second weekend, you've got the buck of a lifetime show up hard on your right-hand side and you can't shoot him, you're going to think about that the whole year till the next season comes back around.
Absolutely. And that may be that only opportunity that you have at that particular deer in your lifetime.
It may be. It very well may be. Again, learning how to shoot the other way doesn't guarantee it, but it sure takes away
No.
a lot of the. It sure gives you a better chance.
Yes,
I can't do that with my bow because the way a bow is
right.
made, but I have shot my crossbow that way and different things. It's a useful skill. It's definitely worth looking into for anybody that's listening to this, to learn how to shoot. And also, for younger guys, you may have some kids someday that are left eye dominant and need to learn how to shoot left-handed. If you don't know how to shoot left-handed, you're going to have trouble teaching them.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
And I mean that, like my wife is left eye dominant, and she hadn't done a lot of shooting before we got married. But we went out shooting one time, and she's shooting right-handed, and she just was really struggling because I tried to get her to shoot with both eyes open,
Right.
and she was really struggling. I'm like, okay, let hold your hand up, make a diamond. Let's see which eye's dominant. And come back
Yeah.
to her left eye every time, and okay, let's switch over. This is going to feel a little bit awkward, but then all of a sudden she's shooting better, and I was like, whoever taught you how to shoot just assumed because you're right-handed, you're right eye dominant, and that's not always the
No.
case. And now, and she doesn't shoot a whole lot, and now she just kind of picks what's comfortable at the time, but she does shoot left-handed. It does makes it interesting finding the right guns for that sometimes, but you know, if you can shoot both ways, it's a whole lot easier to teach someone else to shoot,
It is.
um, depending on if they're left-handed, right-handed. And now, I mentioned this. What's your opinion on this about keeping both eyes open when you're shooting, if you can?
It depends. You're better off if you can't keep both eyes open, quite frankly, because particularly maybe not so much if you're looking at a long shot, but if you're looking like most of us do, where we're hunting in relatively thick woods or whatever, that allows you not only to make that shot, but it also allows you to keep an eye keep that other eye on that animal to see what he does and which way he goes. So if somebody can shoot with both eyes open, by all means do so. I find myself part of the time shooting with both eyes open, and at times where I'm closing either my left or right eye, again, depending, and have a tendency to, if I'm shooting left-handed, to load my right eye more than I do if I'm shooting right-handed and leaving my left eye open.
Sure, sure. And I'm the same way there. I find myself closing my left eye when shooting right-handed when it's low light conditions. And I
Yes.
think it's because I have trouble focusing with both
Right.
eyes when it's lower light. But that's one of the reasons I'm kind of excited about this getting this 30-30 set up with that long eye relief
Oh,
scope. Like I'm saying, it's 2.5 power long eye relief. I should be able to shoot it with both eyes open.
you'd be able to shoot
Um,
open in the beauty of those type of guns where you have a hammer, or I love the Ruger number ones and the Encores and things like that are single shot. With that, I don't have to worry about which side the bolt is on, and the safety generally is a tang safety in the center of the tang or on the back of the action, to where it's not, don't have to reach up with your right hand or left hand. It's whatever hand you've got up there where you trigger fingers on the trigger, that hand can control the safety as well.
yeah, yeah. Well, and you mentioned that Ruger number one a few times. That is a phenomenal rifle. Those are, I mean, they're built like tanks. They're
They're
just the quality and the just the craftsmanship and every. I mean, it's got old world style, I guess.
It does. I love pretty wood, and I've got numerous, thanks to many years of working with Ruger and collecting Ruger number ones, even when I wasn't kind of before. I've got several different calibers and several different rounds, but most all of them have really pretty wood, and I can appreciate the pretty wood, and they're extremely accurate. You hear once in a while somebody say, "Well, those single shots are not very accurate." Well, if they do a little bit of, as we talked about earlier, load development or trying several different loads, you can find a load in a single shot that will shoot extremely accurately to basically where you, maybe not one hole accuracy, but where your clover leaf in every shot that you shoot, even out to 100 yards and beyond. So they're accurate. They look pretty. You can shoot them either left or right handed without any problem. And the safety is always in the same spot. So you don't have to worry about reaching up around the other side to switch to fire or to reload. Either one. You don't have to worry about that bolt getting in your way or being in the way to reload.
Yeah, no, they're really really nice, and you've got that added that added thought in your head that I've only got one shot.
That's
You
true.
take that little bit of time, that little bit of extra time to make the shot count and things like that. I mean, when I started deer hunting, um, as an early teenager, almost 30 years ago now, um, we did a lot of drives.
Oh
That
yeah.
was that was my grandpa's thing. It was me and my cousin, hadn't killed a deer yet, and he'd sit us somewhere, and then him and my dad and my uncles would walk through the woods and drive deer past it. And
Yes.
it it can be a very effective way to hunt, but it teaches a lot of bad habits, I think, to a young hunter, as far as like accuracy by volume.
Good description.
And I mean, the thought process back then was, when a deer comes in, aim at it and empty your gun.
Yep.
And a lot of guys still do deer drives and things like that, and I like to watch the videos of the dog drives in South Carolina and stuff like that. But I think I just learned a lot of bad habits back then. And when I first started hunting with a muzzle loader and some of that stuff, my thought was, well, I've only got one shot, so I can't shoot a running deer. I thought, and then as I got a little older and I got to thinking, well, maybe I don't have any business shooting one running to start with if I can't hit it with the first shot,
Exactly.
and that kind of thing. And I've taken just a really small handful of running animals, and I know that's a controversial topic. My personal limit is it needs to be under 50 yards, and it has to be a full broadside. And if it's under 50 yards, and it's, well, if they're running to me, or so, that's a little different. But just a
Right.
broadside, no quarter or nothing, within 50 yards, I'm pretty confident at taking the shot. But other than that, I won't attempt it. There's people out there better than me that can do more, but that wasn't the case when I was growing up. Well, yeah, I'm trying to think what we had. I think I hunted with an SKS. My cousin had a pump action 243,
Right. Right.
and it was all, and everybody chose their gun by how fast they can get off the second shot. All the guys we hunted with had pumps or semi-automatics,
Exactly. Yes, sir.
and it was just a completely, and Dad came from, he started deer hunting in Virginia, and that was at the time, I don't know if they still can, but at the time they ran deer with dogs and hunted them with buckshot.
Yes, sir.
And he kind of carried that philosophy over to rifle hunting. And then when he met my mom, he met my grandpa, and he came from the deer drive deal, but here it was rifles only, and it was, I really hate to think about how many deer were probably wounded during those times, and things like that. But it was just an accepted practice at the
Oh yeah,
time.
it was. It was. Of course, there's
Um,
still hunted Iowa quite a bit, and even in Illinois and parts of Missouri as well too, as we talked about earlier. And I remember several times being in Iowa where we did deer drives, and they were fun. But I always loved the fact that it was a social aspect of that part of it, of the deer drives. But when it came to actually my hunting deer, I much preferred to find me a spot where I could sit and watch and not have that deer come by at a run. Even though I taught myself how to be fairly proficient at hitting a running game, because in Texas we're blessed with a tremendous number of jackrabbits, and some of these, they get some of these open fields with a little bit of vegetation on them. The beauty of those things is that you could see where that bullet hit every time that you shot. So you learned about leads, you learned about distances and all those other kind of things. So the jackrabbit was absolutely a great training tool. And two, we need to remove jackrabbits because of the great volume that they were there, because they were eating the crops, and then of course they were eating the grass that we're trying to get the cattle onto it too. So, but great target practice and a great learning process of it.
Yeah, I've never hunted jackrabbits. I've hunted cottontails, and I used to hunt them with a semi-automatic 22, an old Marlin
Oh,
Model 60, and that's kind of the same thing. You learn,
yes.
but again, with that Model 60, you load it up with 16 rounds or whatever, and you just um you could tell where the bullet was hitting, and you just swung through the rabbit until it
Right.
rolled. Um, and that kind of thing. But it was a lot of fun. And that taught me a lot as far as shooting moving targets. And then I used to do quite a bit of bird hunting. I don't do that much anymore, and that kind of thing. But I'm with you. Deer drives can be a lot of fun, and I won't
Oh
say I'll
yeah.
never be a part of one again, because I'm sure I will. But I do enjoy just I like the social aspect. I like deer camp and things like that. But I really just like sitting by myself out
Yes.
and watch the sun come up and watch the
Amen.
squirrels play and all that stuff. And it's a lot of it's so enjoyable to I work I, I'm weird. I work second shift, but I work a white collar job. I'm a drafter.
All right.
Um, but I with COVID and everything, they changed our shifts, and I just kind of liked it. And it allows me, being in engineering, to support the shop on second shift. So I work second shift. Like I said, I'm kind of weird, but being, white collar and sitting in the office and listening to people jabber all day and things like that, and answered emails and everything, that's my decompression time, is
Gotcha.
to sit out in the woods and just not think about anything. And like I said, watch the squirrels play and hear the birds chirp and the and turkeys gobble and whatever. And it's just that's the enjoyment for me. I mean, it's a lot of fun hanging out with your buddies and
Oh
all
yeah.
that stuff. Um, but I like to just be out there by myself and listen to all the noises, watch the woods come alive. Anybody that's never spent time out in the outdoors just don't know what they're missing.
They really truly don't. There's something very special about what you just said there. I love seeing the world come alive in the morning.
Oh yeah, it is so much. My daughter, like I said, she's 11, and I've been taking her out with me since she was 5 or so, and she's not as into it as I am. But when we get out there, I mean, we make it. This is daddy and daughter special time. So
Amen.
we get up early in the morning. I always go to we've got a Casey's General Store down here, not too far. They're all over the Midwest. And
Right.
we go and get some donuts and breakfast pizza and whatnot. And then we make our trip. That's kind of our tradition. And we go and hunt, and we'll play games like, how many squirrels can you spot and things like that, and that kind of stuff. And if we see a deer, we see a deer. But I'm trying to teach her that that's not the whole experience.
Right.
Just to see everything, and the sounds and the smells and all that stuff is just. And she's really starting to get it now, and we'll drive around. Hey, Daddy, there's a deer in the field, and things like that. And she likes to fish. That's something that we both enjoy doing together. And my wife's not an outdoorsy person. She just didn't grow up in it and whatnot. So that's my and my daughter's time together. that we get to spend, and you've got children, so you know this, they're just so precious few hours that, I mean, basically she's 11 years old. Half the time I'm going to have with her at home is gone.
Right. Right. Yeah. I've got two daughters that both grew up hunting with me, and we've got four grandsons, one granddaughter, and now a little year-old great grandson that, both my daughters and my grandkids, we're fortunate in Texas. We've got great opportunities. It's not really cold, and both my daughters and grandkids were fairly mature at a young age, and so we started hunting with those guys start shooting when they were like 4 years old, and by the time they were 8 years old, I felt like they were mature enough to take a deer, and they'd been around to where we'd been, taking deer in the past and taking them apart and all that kind of thing. So each one of those grandkids and daughters, they all sat on my lap and shot their first deer sitting on my lap. So made for some very, very special times. And like I said, as soon as I know this great grandson's going to be no different. Only thing I'm going to have to mess with there is try to figure out how to keep his granddad and his dad from not being the ones who take him hunting and let me be the person to take him hunting. That's what I got to figure out at this point.
Yeah, and I tell you, kids in general, I mean, I know a lot of states are different, but kids in general have a better chance in the outdoors now.
Oh yeah.
When I started hunting in I started in Tennessee. We lived there at the time. I was a Navy brat, but then moved to Missouri. Tennessee had what they called a juvenile hunt or a youth hunt, but Missouri did not. And you had to have your hunting safety course and things like that. So you had to be 11, 12 years old before you got to hunt, to deer hunt. You could squirrel hunt and things like that, but before you got
Right.
to deer hunt, you had to be 11, 12 years old. And then of course in Missouri, at the time, it was bucks only unless you drew an any deer permit or a doe permit. And it was just a lot different than it is in most states now, including Missouri, where you get an any deer tag that you can use statewide, and you get a special youth season and things like that. I started hunting when I was 13, and I didn't kill my first deer till I was 19, because the opportunities just weren't there. You talking a kid in school. We didn't hunt on Sundays, so I got to hunt 2 days a year.
Right.
And I got to hunt bucks only 2 days a year. The first year I got drawn for an antlerless tag, I killed my first deer.
Cool.
But I was 19 years old. And that made me, I think it's kind of a curse and a blessing as far as the kids go. It did make me appreciate it a little bit more, I think,
Right.
because I had to wait longer, and it wasn't as easy to obtain and things like that. But then I look at my daughter and I'm like, well, I could start taking her when she was 6. She's got the special youth season, and I do like that because I can take her, give her an early opportunity. We can go out by ourselves,
Right.
and then I can go out during gun season. I take the first weekend myself, and that's my freezer filler time. And then if I've got a deer by then I take her out the second weekend if she hasn't had one, and things like that. It gives a little more versatility and things like that. But I'm not sure she's going to appreciate it quite as much as I did, because she didn't have to work quite as hard to do it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um,
I grew up at a time frame when we hunted deer. We didn't have hardly any deer. And if somebody in our little rural community took a deer, you were a hero for the year. So we started hunting deer real early, but in our lives, but we hunted several years generally before we finally were able to take one, kind of thing. So back then too, it was just strictly bucks. And these days too, we're fortunate with the deer populations pretty much across the country being tremendously high. And so there's so many more opportunities now at deer than there were, just a few years ago, and regardless of how old you are. But so it's a little bit easier, I think, to introduce kids into hunting. Here in Texas, we're fortunate because we don't have the minimum age. As long as you're accompanied by a parent or a grandparent or a guardian, you can get a hunting license before you need a hunter safety card and kind of thing. So a lot of the kids here get to start hunting early, and we've got a lot of opportunities because we do have a tremendous deer population. So it's a little bit easier. And then too, here in Texas, we're blessed with kind of mild weather. So it's not like, okay, opening day of deer season is going to be 2 degrees or going to be cold, wind blowing, that kind of thing. So, and we've got longer seasons, so we can take kids to where it's really kind of a most enjoyable kind of an experience. About 37 years ago, 2 other guys and I formed the Texas Wildlife Association, and part of our group from that, we created the Texas Youth Hunting Organization. And since that inception of our organization, we've introduced probably about 88,000 kids to hunting.
Oh, wow.
So again, we have private land, we have a lot of deer, and our landowners are very gracious a lot of times about bringing kids onto their property. Of course, they're there with a supervisor adult, with a hunt master, but I get tickled sometimes because we put a lot of emphasis on taking kids hunting, and we've been doing that in Texas for a long, long time. We now also have an adult program that's takes people, regardless of, if you got to be over 18 years of age to get into that program. And we take people out and on properties, and they're allowed to take an animal. But beyond all that too, we show them they have to have their hunter safety course taken care of. But we also show them then how to properly take care of the venison, and in a lot of instances also show them how to properly prepare the venison for the table.
Oh, that's a really neat program.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested in, or any of the states are interested, I mean, we've kind of served as a model. But if they want to learn more about all that, we do a lot of other education type stuff through there as well too. But they can go to www.texas-wildlife.org, texas-wildlife.org, and pretty good explanation of a lot of things that we do in terms of schools, in terms of all the different species that we introduce kids to through some of the brigade programs we have with the bobwhite quail and the waterfowl brigade and the buckskin brigade. But a lot of good things have happened through that organization in the last several years.
Yeah, no, that sounds excellent. I recently listened to a podcast, and this group it's a big honker podcast. I'm sure most people are familiar with it. So they've got a waterfowl hunting outfit in Texas, and
Right.
they put on I think it's happened already. They're putting on a youth hunt for Gold Star families, for kids.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, for kids who've lost a parent
Yes.
during the war. And it started off as a dove hunt, but the guy really got into it, and he arranged to where they're going to show up, they get to hunt. Mossberg's giving them a shotgun.
Cool.
The kids get their own shotgun. They get to they get all their meals and everything furnished for them, lodging and whatnot. It's going to be a few days. He arranged a helicopter hog hunt that they get to go on, and a high fence cull-buck deer hunt.
They're in for some treats, aren't they?
Oh, they are in. These kids are never going to forget this.
No. I love it.
The fact that they're doing this for these families, for these kids that lost their parents.
Yes.
It is just, I mean, being a veteran myself, it really, really tugged at my heart. But getting kids involved in general is something that I'm pretty passionate about. And even as a young man, before I had kids and stuff, I took every opportunity I could. I mean, I took, he's dead now, but I took my wife's brother before we'd gotten married and whatnot. He was quite a bit younger than me, and I would take him hunting, and my I've got some nephews and things that have expressed interest in it and whatnot. I've always, you've got to get the next generation involved in it. And now I've got my daughter and whatnot. But anytime somebody does something like that, any programs like that, for kids, it's just because if they don't learn what it's all about, they're our future lawmakers.
That's it. I don't care. I'd love for everybody to have the opportunity to hunt and fish, and they need to. But to me, what's every bit as important is, even though if you go back and look at some of the cultures of many years ago, not everybody was a hunter in the community, but everybody depended upon excuse me, everybody depended upon the hunter, and they had an understanding how important hunting was to the community in terms of food, but also in terms of a lot of other things. And to me, if we can introduce children to hunting and even adults, and if they continue hunting, that's fantastic. But even if they don't, they now have a better understanding why hunting is important to the perpetuation of wildlife and the proper use in terms of habitat, of the available habitat that's left for wildlife. So if we can get people into hunting, if they stay there, fantastic. Provides the best food there is possible
Oh, for
anywhere.
sure.
And there was a big, of course, a lot of big locavore type movement going on now too. And I think that's really kind of bringing hunting back into the proper perspective. I know that in the last couple of years with the COVID thing, a lot of people started being concerned about where their food came from and if they would have food. And the sale of hunting and fishing licenses greatly increased in every state, not just the states you would expect them to, but particularly in terms like California and New York and New Hampshire and Connecticut and Rhode Island. Those numbers are up considerably there in those states as well too, in sale of hunting license and fishing license.
Yeah. Well, and they expected it to fall off, but it hasn't yet.
No, and I don't think it will. I think people all of a sudden now are realizing that the wild game food available out there is probably the safest and the best there is. And as more people try it and learn that they can do, harvest their own game for food, that number is going to maintain itself. And I think over a period of time, beer will likely maybe continue to increase.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, I grew up, my dad hunted, my grandparents hunted, and all that. I grew up in it. My wife wasn't really in it. She certainly wasn't against it, but she wasn't involved in it and didn't understand everything about it. But I will never forget, we'd been married 2 or 3 years, and we ran out of ground venison.
Right.
So she bought some hamburger from the store and made some chili. And we both sat there and are like, this is nasty.
Exactly.
Because we were just so used to, we don't buy hamburger. I'll buy a steak every now and then. I'll buy some pork and whatnot. But we don't buy hamburger because that's a majority of what I do with the deer is
right.
grind it, because you can do so much with it. We don't buy hamburger. And we're sitting there eating them, and it was greasy, and it was and it was that was her thought process changed. Then she's like, okay, now I really understand why you hunt, because it's just so much better. And my daughter's the same way. And one of her schoolmates, she wanted to bring over for dinner or something, and they said that they didn't eat deer, and she said, well, you can't eat dinner at our house. Well, Larry, we've been on here for quite a while. How about you go ahead if you got any social media sites or anything you want to mention real quick, and then we'll close her up.
Absolutely. I do also do podcasts. I do a podcast called DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn that you can go to Carbon TV to do. And then I do a weekly podcast also with Sporting Classics called Campfires with Luke and Larry. We do a weekly television show called A Sportsman's Life that's on Carbon TV. And then they can always get in touch with me, primarily probably through Facebook at Larry Weishuhn. We've had a Larry Weishuhn Outdoors page there, and we just changed it back to Larry Weishuhn and kind of a public figure thing, so they can get in touch with me there. And they can still get in touch with me occasionally on Instagram at a couple different places, but probably Facebook is the best place to do it at right now until we get a few different accounts changed. But I'd love to hear from people out there and hear how they're doing, and always interested in the good hunting story, a fishing story as well too. But I want to thank you particularly for allowing me to join you here today on your podcast.
Well, and I appreciate you getting on. Like it, I mean, I kind of just do this as a hobby, and I don't have a lot of followers, but I'm trying to build it and whatnot. But I just enjoy getting different perspectives. I want to mention this real quick, and we'll close. Like I said, I met you at Bass Pro Shops over 20 years ago, and you signed that picture that I mentioned earlier. And it just, the way that you treated other people isn't the way that everybody in the outdoors does, unfortunately. And I've had some bad experiences meeting some outdoor personalities over the years. They're few and far between, but I had some bad experiences. And you really impressed me. I was about 18 years old, so it's been a while. And I always thought if I ever got the chance, I'd like to talk to you again and something like that. So we've gotten this opportunity, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspectives. And like I do things a little bit different. A lot of people would want to know more about the biology and things I just like to talk about the outdoors like we did. So I thank you a lot for your time as well, and for all those that are listening or watching. You check us out on YouTube, Veteran Outdoorsman, on Anchor or Spotify, Veteran Outdoorsman. And I thank everybody. God bless y'all, and good luck on your future hunts, Larry.
And the very same to you. And again, thank you for allowing me to join you around your
No
campfire.
problem. No problem. Have a good one, everybody.